The crystalline spires of Arthuria Prime pierced the lavender sky like fingers reaching for the stars. Ambassador Nathaniel Reed stood in the transport chamber of the human diplomatic vessel, his heart racing despite years of diplomatic training. This was humanity's first direct contact with the Arthurian Empire, a civilization that had watched humanity from afar for centuries without revealing themselves. Transport coordinates locked, the technician announced. Good luck, Ambassador. Nathaniel straightened his formal attire one last time. Remember, if I don't signal within 20 minutes. The world dissolved into streams of light. When reality reassembled itself, Nathaniel knew immediately something had gone wrong. Instead of the designated diplomatic chamber, he stood in a vast circular room with walls of flowing liquid metal. Patterns of light danced across the surface like neural pathways, and the air carried the sweet scent of something alien yet familiar, like orchids mixed with ozone. But what made his blood freeze wasn't the room itself. It was the figure standing before him, Princess Vestra of the Arthurian Empire, her iridescent skin shifting colors like the surface of a soap bubble, her 4 eyes, all different shades of gold, wide with shock. They stared at each other in absolute silence for 3 heartbeats. Then the room exploded into motion. Guards materialized from hidden alcoves, their biomechanical armor flowing like mercury as it hardened into combat configuration. Energy weapons hummed to life, their tips tracking Nathaniel's every breath. Wait. Nathaniel raised his hands slowly, knowing the next few seconds would determine not just his fate, but potentially the relationship between their species. This is a diplomatic transport error. I am Ambassador Nathaniel Reed of Earth, scheduled for audience with your High Council. Princess Vestra's upper eyes narrowed while her lower ones studied him intently. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. You have appeared in my private sanctuary. A space where no outsider has stood in 3,000 years. I understand the gravity of this situation, Nathaniel said carefully, but I assure you, this was not intentional. Our transport was locked on the coordinates provided by your diplomatic corps. The guards tensed as Vestra took a step closer to Nathaniel. Her movement was impossibly graceful, as if she existed partially in another dimension. The patterns on the walls pulsed faster, responding to her presence. Interesting, she said, her head tilting slightly. You show no fear. I respect your power, your highness, but I fear only failing my mission. Humanity has waited centuries for this dialogue. A smile flickered across Vestra's face, an expression so subtle it was almost imperceptible. Most species grovel when they stand before me. They see only the power, the alien nature of my being. You look me in the eyes, all of them, and speak of dialogue. Different doesn't mean inferior or superior, Nathaniel responded. Just, different. The guards shifted uncomfortably as their princess circled Nathaniel slowly. The liquid metal walls rippled in her wake, creating patterns that seemed to mirror her thoughts. You are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish, Ambassador Reed. Perhaps both. Vestra stopped in front of him again. Do you know the penalty for entering this chamber uninvited? I imagine it's severe, but executing Earth's first ambassador would be rather counterproductive to establishing diplomatic relations. To everyone's surprise, Vestra laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a quantum storm. Indeed it would. She gestured, and the guards lowered their weapons slightly. Tell me, Ambassador, why do you humans push so hard for this dialogue? We have watched your species for centuries. You war among yourselves, you damage your planet, you stumble through space like children. Yet you also create beauty from chaos, you rise from your own ashes, and you never, ever stop reaching for the stars. Why? Nathaniel considered his words carefully. Because we believe the universe is better when its people stand together than apart. Yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we sometimes fail. But we learn, we adapt, and we grow. We're not here to just take from the Arthurian Empire, we're here to offer partnership. Vestra's eyes shimmered with an unreadable emotion. And if we refuse? Then we respect your decision and continue to grow on our own. But I believe both our civilizations would be poorer for the lost opportunity. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Finally, Vestra turned to her guards. Leave us. The guards hesitated for just a moment before melting back into the walls, leaving Nathaniel alone with one of the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Your transport malfunction, Vestra said quietly, was no accident. Someone wanted you to appear here, wanted to create an incident. The question is, who benefits from keeping our peoples apart? Nathaniel's diplomatic training kicked into high gear. You believe there's a conspiracy? I believe, Ambassador Reed, that you and I have stumbled into something far more interesting than a simple diplomatic meeting. Her colors shifted to deeper hues. How do you feel about solving a mystery? Nathaniel smiled slightly. I thought you'd never ask. The High Council chamber of Arthuria Prime dwarfed any human structure Nathaniel had ever seen. Towers of living crystal stretched upward into infinity, their surfaces reflecting and refracting the light of 3 setting suns. 60 Arthurian elders sat in a perfect spiral formation, their bodies shimmering with barely contained energy, their multiple eyes all fixed upon him. Princess Vestra stood to the side, her position carefully neutral, though Nathaniel noticed how her colors would shift subtly whenever the questioning became particularly aggressive. They had spent hours discussing strategy in her sanctuary before this moment, but now he stood alone. Ambassador Reed, Elder Lysander's voice resonated through the chamber, his aged form rippling with deep purples and blues. You materialized in our most sacred space, violating traditions that predate your species' mastery of fire. Why should we not consider this an act of war? Nathaniel kept his voice steady, remembering Vestra's advice, show strength through calm. Honorable elders, if humanity intended hostility, we would not have spent decades establishing peaceful contact. We would not have shared our cultural archives, our music, our art. And we certainly wouldn't have sent a single unarmed diplomat. Yet here you stand, another elder, Theron, cut in, his colors flashing aggressive reds, where no outsider was meant to be. Our transport systems do not make mistakes, human. Precisely, Nathaniel replied, causing several elders to shift in surprise at his agreement. Your systems don't make mistakes. Which means someone deliberately altered the coordinates. The question isn't whether I should be punished for appearing in the sanctuary, it's who wanted me to appear there, and why they wanted to sabotage these historic negotiations. A murmur rippled through the chamber, patterns of light cascading across the walls in response to the elders' agitation. Nathaniel pressed his advantage. Consider, if I had appeared in your diplomatic chamber as planned, we would be discussing trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense treaties. Instead, we're focused on an apparent transgression that conveniently threatens to derail everything both our peoples have worked toward. Elder Lysander's colors darkened. You suggest treachery among our own? I suggest that there are always those who fear change, who profit from isolation. They exist in human society as well. Nathaniel gestured to the chamber around them. Your civilization has achieved wonders we humans can barely comprehend. Yet even you must have those who prefer the familiar to the possible. Princess Vestra moved then, her voice carrying that strange harmonic that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. Honored elders, I have spent time with the human ambassador. His appearance in my sanctuary was a violation, but his reactions, his words, and his conduct since have been nothing but diplomatic. Perhaps we should consider that this incident, rather than disqualifying him, has given us unique insight into human character. The chamber erupted in overlapping harmonics as the elders debated among themselves. Nathaniel stood perfectly still, knowing this moment would define not just his mission, but humanity's future among the stars. Finally, Elder Lysander raised all 4 hands for silence. Ambassador Reed, you will remain in the diplomatic quarter under observation while we investigate these claims. Princess Vestra, as the violated party, will oversee the investigation personally. His upper eyes fixed on Nathaniel. Know that if we discover any deception, the consequences will be severe. I understand, honored elder. And I welcome any investigation, as truth fears no examination. As the council session ended and Nathaniel was escorted out, he caught a glimpse of Vestra. Her colors had shifted to a pattern he'd never seen before, something between anticipation and approval. She gave him the slightest of nods before disappearing into a private corridor. Later, in his assigned quarters, Nathaniel studied the city through windows of living crystal. The Arthurian architecture seemed to defy physics, structures flowing and shifting like thoughts given form. A soft chime announced a visitor. Princess Vestra entered, her guards remaining outside. You handled yourself well, Ambassador. High praise, coming from you. Nathaniel turned from the window. Though I suspect the real challenge is just beginning. Indeed. Vestra's colors shifted to deep, serious tones. Someone has accessed restricted transport protocols, bypassed quantum-locked security measures, and very nearly sparked an interspecies incident. The question is, how far up does this conspiracy reach? And can we expose it before they try again? Nathaniel added. I doubt they'll be pleased their first attempt failed. Vestra moved to stand beside him at the window, her presence making the crystals sing softly. Tell me, Ambassador, how far are you willing to go to uncover the truth? This investigation may take us to places even I am not supposed to see. Nathaniel watched the alien city shimmer in the dying light of its suns. As far as necessary, Your Highness. Some things are worth any risk. Please, she said softly, her colors shifting to something almost warm. When we're alone, call me Vestra. Then I'm Nathaniel. He turned to face her fully. Partners in crime-solving? Her laugh filled the room with dancing lights. Partners. Though I warn you, Nathaniel, solving this mystery may change both our worlds forever. Good, he replied. They probably need changing. As night fell over Arthuria Prime, two figures from vastly different worlds began planning how to unravel a conspiracy that threatened everything they both held dear. Neither of them could have guessed how deep the mystery would go, or how it would force them to question everything they thought they knew about their own histories. The ancient archives of Arthuria Prime lay deep beneath the crystal spires, in chambers that predated the Empire itself. Nathaniel followed Vestra through corridors that seemed to breathe, their surfaces shifting like liquid mercury in response to their presence. The princess's natural bioluminescence provided the only light they needed, her skin casting ethereal patterns on the walls. These records haven't been accessed in over a millennium, Vestra explained, her lower eyes scanning the intricate markings on the wall while her upper eyes watched their path ahead. If someone tampered with the transport coordinates, they would have needed ancient access codes, codes that only exist down here. And you're allowed to be here? Nathaniel asked, noting how the walls seemed to shy away from his touch, unlike how they reached for Vestra. Technically, yes. Though bringing you here. Her colors flickered with something like amusement. Let's say it falls into a diplomatic gray area. They reached a vast circular chamber where streams of data flowed like waterfalls along the walls, each droplet containing centuries of history. Vestra placed her hand against a central pillar, her bioluminescence pulsing in a complex pattern. The chamber responded, the data streams converging around them. There, she said suddenly. 2 solar cycles ago, someone accessed the ancient transport protocols. But this code? She frowned, her colors darkening. This is impossible. Nathaniel stepped closer, though the symbols meant nothing to him. What is it? These codes predate our modern empire. They're from the First Age, when our people first achieved interstellar travel. No one should have access to them, let alone know how to use them. A soft sound behind them made them both turn. Standing in the doorway was Elder Lysander, his aged form radiating disapproval and something else, fear. "Your Highness," he said, his harmonics sharp with authority, "you go too far. Bringing an outsider here shows exactly how seriously I take this investigation," Vestra cut in, her own harmonics matching his in strength. "Someone used first-age codes to compromise our security. Codes that supposedly only the High Council can access. Care to explain that, Elder?" Lysander's colors shifted rapidly. "You don't understand the forces you're dealing with, child. Some secrets are kept for a reason." "What secrets?" Nathaniel asked quietly, drawing both Arthurians' attention. "What could be so dangerous about human-Arthurian relations that it justifies sabotage? You humans," Lysander's voice carried centuries of weight, always pushing, always questioning. "Never satisfied with the natural order." "The natural order?" Vestra moved closer to the elder, her colors intense. "Or the order you and certain others have maintained? Tell us the truth, Elder. What are you protecting?" Instead of answering, Lysander raised his hand. The archives around them suddenly blazed with light, data streams whirling like a tornado. "I truly am sorry, Your Highness. But some truths must remain buried." Security forces materialized from the walls, their weapons trained on Nathaniel. But before they could fire, Vestra's body erupted in brilliant light, her bioluminescence temporarily blinding everyone in the chamber. She grabbed Nathaniel's hand, her skin felt like silk charged with electricity, and pulled him toward a hidden passage that had appeared in the wall. They ran through tunnels that seemed to form just ahead of them and dissolve behind them, Vestra's innate connection to the living architecture guiding their escape. When they finally stopped, they were in a small chamber that thrummed with ancient energy. "Are you all right?" Vestra asked, her colors still agitated from the confrontation. "Fine," Nathaniel caught his breath. "But what was that about? What could possibly be so important that a High Elder would risk everything to keep it hidden?" Vestra's expression was troubled, all four eyes focused on something distant. "During our first age, before we achieved our current form, our scientists conducted experiments. Experiments in directed evolution, in species manipulation. Most records were destroyed, but there were rumors." "Rumors?" "That we didn't evolve naturally to our current form. That we had help. And that we weren't the only species they experimented on." She turned to face him fully. "Nathaniel, what do your people know about human origins? About how you achieved sentience so much faster than any other known species?" Nathaniel felt a chill run down his spine as implications clicked into place. "You're saying..." "I'm saying that perhaps our people's histories are more intertwined than anyone was meant to know. And someone is very determined to keep us from discovering the truth." A distant rumble suggested their pursuers were getting closer. Vestra's colors shifted to decisive patterns. "We need to access the deepest archives," she said. "The first age records that even the High Council doesn't know still exist. But to do that..." She hesitated. "What?" "We'll need to do something that hasn't been attempted in thousands of years. A true biosynthetic merge. My natural connection to our architecture combined with your human adaptability might be enough to break through the final barriers." "That sounds dangerous," Nathaniel observed. Vestra's colors rippled with something like affection. "Extremely. Still willing to be partners in crime-solving?" Despite everything, Nathaniel found himself smiling. "Always. Though I have to ask, is this merge going to be as intimate as it sounds?" For the first time since he'd met her, Vestra's colors shifted to something that might have been a blush. "More so, actually." "Still interested?" Another rumble, closer now. Nathaniel took her hand, feeling that electric silk sensation again. "Lead the way, partner." As they delved deeper into the ancient heart of Arthuria Prime, both of them knew they were about to cross lines that could never be uncrossed. But some truths were worth any price, even if they changed both their worlds forever. The heart of Arthuria Prime pulsed around them like a living thing. In this deepest chamber, the walls weren't just responsive, they were almost conscious, patterns of light and energy flowing like blood through crystalline veins. Nathaniel and Vestra stood before an ancient interface, its surface rippling with symbols that seemed to move of their own accord. The biosynthetic merge, Vestra explained, her colors shifting with complex emotions, was how our ancestors first learned to communicate with the living architecture. But to merge with a non-Arthurian. She looked at him with all four eyes. This has never been attempted. What's the worst that could happen? Nathaniel asked, trying to keep his voice light despite the gravity of the situation. Mental fusion. Physical transformation. Possible dissolution of your molecular structure. Her colors flickered with concern. Or it could simply kill us both. You have such a way with words. He stepped closer to her. But we don't have a choice, do we? They're getting closer, and these secrets, whatever they are, could prevent a war between our peoples. The distant sound of pursuit echoed through the ancient corridors. Vestra's colors stabilized into a pattern of determination. The merge requires absolute trust, absolute openness. Our minds, our memories, our very essence will become one with the archive's consciousness. Are you ready for that level of intimacy? Nathaniel met her gaze steadily. I trust you, Vestra. Completely. She reached for him, her hands glowing with internal light. As their fingers intertwined, the chamber around them began to respond, the crystalline structures growing and flowing toward them like curious tentacles of light. Don't fight it, Vestra whispered as the energy began to envelop them. Let it in. Let me in. The world dissolved into pure sensation. Nathaniel felt his consciousness expanding, merging with Vestra's alien mind. Her memories became his, the weight of royal responsibility, the loneliness of power, the secret hope she'd held for humanity's potential. In turn, his memories flowed into her, Earth's struggles and triumphs, humanity's relentless drive to explore, and his growing feelings for her. They were no longer two separate beings but a bridge between species, their merged consciousness expanding through the living archive. Millennia of hidden history rushed through them like a flood. They saw the truth. The First Age Arthurians, desperate to evolve beyond their physical limitations, had seeded countless worlds with their genetic templates. Earth had been one such world. But unlike other experiments, humanity had developed differently, faster, more adaptively, with a creativity that bordered on chaos. The Arthurians, watching from afar, had been simultaneously fascinated and terrified by their creation. We're your children, Nathaniel's thought echoed through their merged consciousness. And we abandoned you, Vestra's response carried centuries of guilt. The council knew. They've always known. That's why they resisted contact, fear of facing what we'd done, what you'd become. Their shared revelation was interrupted by a surge of hostile energy. Elder Lysander and his forces had breached the outer chambers, their presence threatening to disrupt the merge. If they break the connection now, it could destroy us both, Vestra's thought carried urgent warning. But something unexpected was happening. The living architecture, responding to their merged consciousness, began to pulse with new patterns. The very walls of Arthuria Prime were awakening, recognizing in their joined minds an echo of their original creators. Through their shared perception, they felt Elder Lysander stop short as the ancient security systems activated. Walls flowed like quicksilver, trapping the pursuers in containment fields of pure energy. The entire city was responding to them, accepting their merged consciousness as its new sovereign authority. This is impossible, they heard Lysander's distant voice. The archives themselves are protecting them. In their merged state, Nathaniel and Vestra reached deeper into the historical records, broadcasting the truth throughout the city's neural network. Every crystal spire, every quantum-locked database, every security system began displaying the long-hidden evidence of humanity's origins. The merge began to fade naturally, their consciousnesses separating but forever changed by what they'd shared. As the energy field dissipated, they found themselves standing in a transformed chamber, the walls alive with displayed history, and Elder Lysander's security forces kneeling before them. Vestra's colors had changed permanently, now carrying traces of human DNA that shimmered beneath her iridescent skin. Nathaniel's eyes held tiny flecks of Arthurian bioluminescence, a permanent mark of their connection. "The truth cannot be hidden any longer," Vestra announced, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the air itself vibrate with authority. "Our peoples were never meant to be separated. We are one family, divided by time and fear, but united by something stronger than tradition." Nathaniel stood beside her, their hands still joined, feeling the last echoes of their merged consciousness settling into new patterns of understanding. "The question now," he said to the kneeling elders, "is what we do with this truth. Do we continue to fear it, or do we embrace a future together?" Elder Lysander, his colors muted with resignation, looked up at them. "The old ways are broken. Perhaps." He hesitated, "Perhaps that is not entirely a tragedy." As the news spread through the city like wildfire, Nathaniel and Vestra faced each other, both forever changed by what they'd experienced. The biosynthetic merge had done more than reveal historical truths, it had created something entirely new, a bridge between species that could never be unmade. "What happens now?" Nathaniel asked softly, still able to feel echoes of her thoughts. Vestra's colors shifted to a pattern he now recognized as hope. "Now, my dear ambassador, we begin the real work of uniting our peoples." Though perhaps, her colors flickered with affection, not quite in the way either of us initially imagined. Above them, the crystal spires of Arthuria Prime sang with new frequencies, harmonizing human chaos and Arthurian order into something beautiful and unprecedented. The future had arrived, and it was more extraordinary than anyone could have predicted. Dawn broke over Arthuria Prime in a symphony of light and color. The three suns rose in sequence, their combined radiance playing across the crystal spires that now pulsed with both Arthurian precision and human dynamism. In the Grand Assembly Chamber, representatives from both worlds gathered for a historic moment. Nathaniel stood before the assembled dignitaries, his eyes now carrying that subtle Arthurian luminescence, a permanent reminder of the merge that had changed everything. Beside him, Princess Vestra's skin shimmered with new patterns, her natural iridescence now containing traces of human DNA that created unprecedented colors in the Arthurian spectrum. For centuries, Nathaniel addressed the chamber, his voice carrying easily through the space, "Our peoples have been separated by fear, misunderstanding, and hidden truths. Today, we bridge that gap not just with words or treaties, but with understanding born of shared experience." The walls of the chamber reflected the combined emotional resonance of all present, swirling patterns of light that showed both human passion and Arthurian grace. In the front row, the Earth delegation sat in awe of the living architecture they now knew their ancestors had helped create. Among the Arthurian elders, even those who had opposed change now showed colors of cautious acceptance. Elder Lysander, his position modified but not removed, stood to speak. "The revelation of our shared heritage has forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our past. The first age experiments that led to humanity's creation were born of both ambition and arrogance. In our fear of facing those choices, we nearly prevented a reunion that was perhaps always meant to be." Vestra stepped forward, her ceremonial robes flowing like liquid starlight. "The past cannot be changed, but the future remains unwritten. The biosynthetic merge demonstrated more than just our historical connection, it showed us the potential of true cooperation between our peoples. Human adaptability combined with Arthurian wisdom can create something greater than either civilization could achieve alone." As if in response to her words, the chamber's crystal architecture shifted, forming new patterns that represented the blending of both species' aesthetic sensibilities. The Earth delegates gasped as the floor beneath them became transparent, revealing the ancient machinery far below, technology that represented the beginning of both their people's stories. Today, Nathaniel continued, we sign more than a treaty. We acknowledge a truth that reshapes our understanding of ourselves and our place in the galaxy. Humanity's drive to explore, our creativity, our relentless pursuit of progress, these weren't random traits, but echoes of the same spark that led the first age Arthurians to reach for the stars. Vestra raised her hands, and the chamber's walls displayed the genetic maps they discovered in the ancient archives, beautiful, complex patterns showing how human DNA had been crafted from Arthurian templates, modified to thrive on Earth's unique conditions. But we are not merely revisiting the past, she declared. The biosynthetic merge proved that we can achieve new forms of cooperation, transcending the boundaries between our species. Already, our scientists are exploring applications of this breakthrough, ways to enhance communication, share knowledge, and solve problems that have plagued both our worlds. The formal ceremony proceeded with the signing of the Convergence Treaty, its terms reflecting the profound changes in both societies. But the real power lay not in the documents, but in the visible proof of cooperation embodied by Nathaniel and Vestra themselves, living bridges between worlds that had been separated for too long. Later, in a quiet moment away from the celebrations, they stood together in Vestra's sanctuary, the place where their journey had begun. The wall patterns, once alien to Nathaniel, now felt like an extension of his own consciousness, thanks to the lingering effects of the merge. I can still feel echoes of your thoughts sometimes, he said softly, watching the play of light across her iridescent skin. Vestra's colors shifted to the warm patterns he'd learned to recognize as affection. The merge changed us both in ways we're still discovering. The scientists say the effects should have been temporary, but we created something new, Nathaniel finished. Something unprecedented. Like the union of our peoples. She turned to face him fully, all four eyes shimmering with emotion. The council has accepted my proposal. As heir to the throne, I'll need someone who understands both worlds to help lead us into this new era. Nathaniel felt his heart race. Are you offering me a job, Your Highness? Her colors rippled with amusement. I'm offering you a future, Nathaniel. One we'll build together. She held out her hand, small arcs of energy dancing between her fingers. Partner? He took her hand, feeling that familiar electric silk sensation, now comforting rather than alien. Always. Above them, the crystal spires of Arthuria Prime sang with new harmonies, songs of human passion and Arthurian grace, of past secrets and future promises, of two peoples finding their way home to each other after centuries apart. As Nathaniel and Vestra stood together in the growing light of a new day, they knew that their accidental meeting had been just the beginning of a much greater story. The universe, it seemed, had plans of its own. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries came not from careful planning, but from unexpected steps into someone else's space, and the courage to face whatever truths waited there. End.